All right, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so today we get into graphing negative sine and cosine functions. So far we've only done positive sine and cosine functions. So the only difference today is that they're all going to be negative, but the rest of the steps will be the same. Okay, calculating the amplitude, the midline, and the period. Okay, so before we begin, let's review the two cosine and sine functions. Okay, so here we have y equals cosine of x. That's the most basic form of the cosine graph. Okay, so all you have to remember here is that when we're graphing, okay, cosine always begins at the maximum here. Okay, so let's look at this equation here and let's calculate the amplitude, the midline, and then the period. Okay, so the amplitude would be the first number after the equal sign. In this case, it'll be an invisible 1, which I'll go ahead and write. B is not actually the period, but it is the number we use to calculate the period. Again, this is an invisible 1 right there. And then right here after the x, we would normally have the midline. It would say usually +5 or some number, or minus some number, but in this case, we could just call it +0. So that would be our midline, okay? So the amplitude and the midline are easily calculated just by looking at the equation. So the amplitude is 1, and then the midline is 0, okay? And by the way, the midline would be y equals 0, okay? In other words, the x-axis here. That's where y is 0 all the time. And then now to calculate the period, we're just going to do 2 pi over b, which is 1. So 2 pi over 1, that's going to be 2 pi, okay? So what I was teaching you guys is just go ahead and count 4 tick marks, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the origin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're just going to write 2 pi right there, okay? Now, the cosine, remember, starts from the maximum. So where is the maximum? Well, remember, the maximum is the distance between the midline and the amplitude, right? So it's from 0 to 1. So it's just basically going to be up 1 and then down 1. That's going to be my maximum, and then my minimum will be at -1, okay, from 0. So the cosine starts at the top, at the maximum, and then on the next tick mark, it goes down, and then it goes down again on the next tick mark, and then it comes back up, and then it goes up on the last tick mark. Okay, so I have 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it looks like a V, but it's actually a curve. Okay, so we're going to make a curvy here like this, and that is my cosine graph, one period of the cosine graph. Notice here, it crosses the midline twice, 1 and 2, and then it has the other points, 1, 2, 3, off of the midline. Okay, so 2 of them are above, and then 1 of them is below. Okay, when it's a negative, well, everything just goes in reverse. Okay, if it were y equals negative cosine of x, notice here a would still be the invisible 1 there. The b would still be the invisible 1, and then we would still have c, which is the 0 here in this case. Okay, so everything is the same except now we have a negative here. So all these here are the same. The amplitude is still 1. Okay, the midline is still 0, and the period is still 2 pi. Okay, so let me go ahead and draw it here. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks, and I would put 2 pi right here. Okay, but now notice here, my amplitude is still 1, but instead of starting at the maximum, I'm going to start at the minimum. So I'm going to start down here. Okay, I'm going to start down here, and then now instead of going down like I did here, I'm going to go up. So everything gets the direction changed. Okay, so now I'm going from bottom to the top, and on the next tick mark I go up, and on the next tick mark I come back down, and on the last tick mark I come back down to -1. So if I were to connect this with a curvy line, it would look like this. So you see, it just got reflected or flipped over. Okay, and so that's basically the same thing with a sine. Instead of going up from the midline, let me just do a rough sketch here. Remember, the sine just goes like this, like a letter S. Okay, well, if we are doing negative sine, it's going to start at the midline still, but then it's going to go down, up and over like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the examples here. Let's go ahead and calculate these. and then we will graph them, okay? So let's begin with number 1. Here we have an invisible 1. There's our B, and there's our C. So this would be A, B, C. Okay, and notice they're all going to be negative, so that means we're going to go backwards on all of them. Okay, so let's calculate the amplitude. That's going to be 1. It's not negative 1, it's still 1. The amplitude is always a positive number, okay? So even if this were negative 2, we would just write 2 for the amplitude. The midline, I'll just write that next because the period requires a little bit more calculation. The midline is going to be 3, so we'll write y equals 3. That means we're going to draw a midline at 3. And then our period is going to be 2 pi over b, which is 1/2. So this really means 2 pi divided by 1/2. That's what over 1/2 means. And so we're going to go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. So 2 pi times 2 over 1. All right, I can make that into a fraction also. So it becomes 4 pi. So that's my period. Okay, my period is 4 pi. Next one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So this is an invisible 1, so that's my A, this is my B, and this is my C. So the amplitude is 1. Again, it's always going to be positive, okay? Our midline is going to be negative 2, so y equals negative 2. And our period is going to be 2 pi over 1/6. Okay, so let's do that. 2 pi times the reciprocal of this, which is 6 over 1. I could put both of these fractions like this, and so it'll be 12 pi. Okay, that's it. So my period is 12 pi. This is the next one, cosine. So that's A, B, C, right? So my amplitude is 3. Remember, amplitude is always positive. That negative is going to mean it just goes backwards, okay? And then my midline is going to be y equals 5. That means from 5, I'm going to go up 3 and then down 3, okay? And then my period is going to be 2 pi over 1/4, which means 2 pi times 4 over 1, or just 4, which is 8 pi, okay? 2 more to go, and then we'll graph them all, okay? So this is going to be my A, B, C. So that means my amplitude is going to be a 6. My midline is going to be y equals negative 6. And that means I'm going to go down 6, and then from there I'll go up 6 and down 6. And then my period, well, let's calculate. It's going to be 2 pi over 6. That's reducible, so that means I just get 1 pi over 3, or just pi over 3. That's going to be my period, okay? And then finally here, A, B, C. And so my amplitude is 7. My midline is y equals 2. And then to calculate the period, just 2 pi over 1/4. So that becomes 2 pi times the reciprocal of that, which is 4 over 1, which is just 4. That's going to be 8 pi. Okay? All right. So now, let's go ahead and graph this. Okay, I have some graphs here. Let's go ahead and graph the first one here. Y equals negative sine of 1/2 x plus 3. Okay? So remember, from here, basically we're going to go up 3, but notice 1, 2, 3. Do I have space to go up 1 and then down 1? Yeah, I do. Okay, so I could just leave it like that. I could just leave it right here, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. We said our period is 4 pi. So that means at 1, 2, 3, 4, at this tick mark here, I'm just going to write 4 pi. Okay. Now remember the sign is going to start at the midline. So my midline is 3 right here. So this is my midline. Let me just do it in red here. And I don't need to go all the way in because it's going to stop right there anyway. Okay. And then I'm going to go down here. So starting at the midline, I'm going to go down 1. On the next one, I'm going to go up back to the midline. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to come back down. Okay. So those are my 3 points. Notice how 3 points are on the midline. 1, 2, 3. Now just connect. And that's it. I'm done. Okay, that's the graph. Okay, let's do the next one. So notice here we had y equals negative sine of 1/6 x minus 2. So right away our midline is going to be at negative 2. Okay, now if we're down here at negative 2, do we have enough space to go up 1 and down 1? Up 1 and down 1? Yes, we do. So it's okay to count by ones here. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Okay, so at negative 2, that's going to be my midline. Let me go ahead and draw a dotted line here. Now my period, remember we calculated this is the second one here. The period is just 12 pi. So I'm just going to count 4 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now actually, if you wanted to count by twos, just to stretch it out a little, you could do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? So you would actually double it. And then if you want to do that right there, you could just go ahead and put the 12 pi right there. So that just means that now, instead of going every tick mark, we're going to skip one tick mark and then put the point there, okay? Now, since this is sine, remember, it starts at the midline. So this is going to start right there at negative 2 because that's our midline, remember? Okay, now I'm gonna skip one over. So skip that one, and on this one, I'm going to go down 1. Okay, I'm going to skip one again. I'm going to come back up to the middle. I'm going to skip one, and then on the next one, I'll go up 1. And I'm going to skip one, and on the last one, I'm going to go back to the midline. Remember, the sine touches the midline 3 times. There are 3 points. So watch this. When I connect this, it looks like this. Okay, and notice that's where my period ends at 12 pi. Okay, that's all you're doing. Okay, next one here. So this one's a cosine. Now remember, the cosine only touches the midline twice. So where would the midline be? Well, we said that's the midline 5. Notice here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have space here. Okay? And notice from the midline, I'm going to have to count up 3. So that'll be 8. And then down 3, that would be 2. So let me count by, if I count by 3s, well, I wanted to end in 5. So let's go ahead and count by, let's see here, what would be a good number, because we have to go up to 8. So 5, 10, that would be too much. Let's just go by 3s, okay? 3, 6, 9, 12, and then negative 3, negative 6, negative 9, negative 12, okay? On delta math, you'll have individual tick marks, so you'll probably have enough to count by ones on delta math, okay? So notice here, if I count up to 5, right, then that puts me right in between, well, there's 3, 4, 5, so about right there, 2/3 above. And so I'll just kind of put a little tick mark here. Okay, it'll look like that. And then I'm going to count 4 tick marks this time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we set our period there. This is number 3. Our period is 8 pi. So I'm going to go ahead and write 8 pi on the 4 tick mark. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 8 pi. That means my cycle is going to end right there. Okay. Now remember, it's going to go up 3 and down 3, right? But since it's cosine, we're not going to start from the maximum. We're going to start from the minimum. So our minimum will be 3 down from here. So remember, there's really a 4, 5, 6 right there, right? So this is 4. So I go 1, 2, and then 3. And so this would be where I start from here. Okay. And then remember over here, this will be 1, 2, 3. If I go up, I'll be at 8 right there. Okay. So I'm at 2 right here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. Okay. So we had to squeeze them in because I only have 4 altogether. So now I'm going to go here. Then on the next tick mark, which is right here, I'm going to go right up to the midline. Okay. On the next tick mark, which is here, I'm going to go up 3. So 1, 2, 3. So right at 8. And then on the next tick mark, I'm back at the midline. Remember, it only crosses the midline twice. And then finally on the last tick mark, right, that's the end of our cycle, we'll be back at the bottom there. Okay, so just connect with a curvy line. My ink is dying there, as you can see. So that's what it would look like right there. Okay, that's the end of that cycle. Okay, let's move on here. Here we have our midline is -6. Again, I don't have space here. And if I count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8, right? I won't have enough to go down 6 and up 6. So let's count by sixes. Okay, so I'll just do -6, -12, -18. That should be enough. And this will be +6, +12, +18. Okay. All right, so now where's my midline? Oh, well, it's at -6. So this is my midline here. Oops, and I forgot to white this out, as you can see here. So let me go ahead and white out these coordinates. Okay, and so on the fourth tick mark, I'm just going to count by ones again. 1, 2, 3, 4. We said our period here was going to be pi/3. Okay, so it's just pi/3 right there. That's where my cycle will end. Okay, and then so from here, sine, remember sine always starts at the midline. Okay, and then we're going to go down 6 on the next tick mark. So down 6 would be right here, because that's -12. On the next one, we're going to go back to the midline. On the next one, we're going to go up 6, so that'll put us at 0. And then on the last one, we're back at the midline. Okay, so as you can see here, all we're doing is going backwards. Instead of going up, down, up, we're going down, up, down.